Perfect. I forgot. Do
Okay.
you have like a timer going or should I
Yeah,
do
I'll
one?
start one right now. There we go. I
Okay,
have started.
cool.
All right.
All right.
So compare and contrast psychoanalysis and behaviorism.
So what I have is both of them have like a deterministic view, like that we have no free choice. They both believe that experiences directly affect the individual's behavior. And then I had like a couple differences. Psychoanalysis believes that the combination of the id, ego, and superego determine who someone is and focuses on the unconscious, while behaviorists believe that it's not necessarily the unconscious or the conscious that plays the most important role, but it's what people do and who they are is a direct result of the experiences that they have in their life. So,
Perfect. Yeah, I pretty much said the exact same thing, that the psychoanalysis focuses on the id, ego, and superego. And a lot of who you are is unconscious. And then behaviorism is focused on our behaviors, what we do. So, like our reward and punishment history, our learning history. And then with this information, behavioralists would be able to basically determine what, like, how you would act and what decisions you would make.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then a big one, behaviorism is definitely more scientific in nature than psychoanalysis.
Yeah, and there's like more, what was the word? Oh yeah, more like measurable as well.
Yes. All right. The next question, explain how negative reinforcement can maintain anxiety disorders. I don't know if you want to go first or.
Yeah, I can start.
Yeah.
So negative reinforcement is basically when you, it's like removing an aversive stimulus to stop the behavior. Um, and which then increases the likelihood of the behavior that follows. So I would say when you like take away something that, so like someone has a behavior about something and you take that away, then instead of like working through the problem, it's removed. Is that correct?
Yeah, kind of. I think you got the basic idea. Um, I like kind of just like went with like an example
Mm-hmm.
um for like anxiety specifically.
Yeah.
So basically like with removing the stimulus that brings anxiety on the person, it actually allows the individual to avoid it. And when they avoid the stimulus that gives them anxiety, it's like in the long run starts giving them more anxiety about that stimulus. So like an example is like somebody who has social anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
if they avoid social interactions or anytime that they're in it, if they like try and find like the quickest exit out, it's like hi bye, thank you, I'm out of here. um the next time that they're in a social like gathering situation, they're going to have more anxiety about it because they're focusing on like how do I get away from it, how do I avoid it. And like the more you avoid it, the more anxiety you're going to have about it. And I kind of like use OCD. That's kind of because that's I feel like
Yeah,
that's an
that makes
anxiety
sense. Yeah.
disorder. Like if you have like a problem with germs, the more you avoid touching things, the more
The
anxiety
more you're
you're going
gonna
to have
not.
about what
Yeah.
if I accidentally touch this thing.
Yeah.
And then you're just more anxious about the things you're avoiding.
Right. And you've never actually worked through the anxiety or the OCD or the reason of the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Um,
Let's see. Do you have anything else to add for that one?
no. Mm-mm.
Okay. Number 3. So how is spontaneous recovery the enemy of behavioral therapists?
I don't know if my answer is correct or like I don't know what answer he really wants from us, but kind of like what I thought is it's kind of like in a way like a vicious cycle. Like you feel, you put in all this work with the
Mm-hmm.
client and you think you extinguish it and then like bam, it comes back.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, okay, like let's do this again. and then bam, it comes back. And
Yeah.
then it's just like constantly like, did we resolve it, or like is it gonna come back again? Like
Yeah.
it's like almost haunting in a way.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I got. And I think of it kind of as like the enemy, whereas like you can't just like resolve the problem and then stop the therapy. Like if you just stop the therapy once you think the issue is resolved, then it like right, then there's the spontaneous recovery where it comes back. So it's like the idea that like the therapy can't stop, the behavior is going to keep coming back. But yeah, so
Right. Yeah.
basically the
My
same thing.
my question with that is like, how do you know when it's actually gone? Or is it ever actually really gone? Because like if you're looking at like Dr. B's his little drawing without
Yeah.
having lines of the graph, I was just like, I don't know, like your last little dot still looks like it's still there.
Yeah,
So when do you say that it's done?
yeah, like what,
What's
how
the
would you
end
set
goal?
like that criteria? Like, okay, so it happened, like even if it reduces to at one point, can you say that it's like reduced enough that it's not going to happen again? Like even if it doesn't happen for this long of a time, that was longer than the time before, but it could still come back.
Right.
That's a good question. I wonder if it, yeah,
That's why I said it's kind of like haunting because it's just like
I never
you work
know
with a
when it's going
client
to
for
show up.
years and then finally like they don't have it, but then who knows, they could have like a traumatic experience after not having the problem with lipstick or whatever.
Right.
And
And I almost
then
one, I gotta finish. Sorry.
oh yeah, and I was just gonna say like, and then like out of the blue, they could have like a traumatic experience and maybe lipstick was involved. And 3 years after it being extinguished, it's like, bam, it's back.
Right.
And then you got them calling you up saying, hey, we got to go through this all over again.
Yeah, and it'd almost be like a discussion of when do you like even maybe the problem's not visible, but you still continue therapy, even if it's like reduced. But then it's also like at one point you say, okay, let's like if it's a problem that's not as like detrimental or like dangerous, like okay, so this hasn't happened in this long, let's stop therapy. If it happens, then we start it again. But like what are the cases where it's something that if like something is really dangerous, then it's like when do you decide to stop therapy and wait until it happens again? So
Yeah, I don't know.
interesting thing to think
That
about. That's
sounds
a good point.
stressful.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Oh, man.
I feel like I'd start to have a fear of people's anxieties coming back.
Yeah, even like the patient too. You're just like, okay, it's gone, but when is it going to happen again? So I feel like it'd be kind of stressful for the therapist and the patient.
Yeah, I agree. This one was interesting, and I tried to have fun with it when I was like thinking about what my answer would be.
Yeah.
Um, Create examples of how the ABCs could maintain a problematic behavior. Um, so I guess what I have just for like a basic answer without an example is if the person's rewarded for their behavior in response to a antecedent, then they are more likely to continue the negative behavior because they learn that in order to get that reward, all they have to do is produce the negative behavior.
Hmm.
And I just used my dog as an
Yeah, I'm
example.
curious your
I don't have
example.
kids or anything. And like when he was younger, and even sometimes now, he would just like bark and bark and bark, and he'd just yell at me for anything, whether he wanted to play or go outside. And in the beginning, like I was young, and this is my like first like dog, like on my own, and I'd be like, shut up, like okay, like here's a treat.
Right.
Like, here's a treat. Like, you want to play? Let's play. And so then he just like would just bark at me for any reason because he's like, if I bark, I get something.
Right.
Um, and thankfully I kind of caught on to it pretty quick and found that, as long
Right.
as I'm keeping him entertained and enriched and busy and tired, I don't really have that issue. And now, like if he wants something, he just like will like just come up to me and like put his cute little face
Oh,
on my
that's
lap
cute.
and just like look up at me with his cute little eyes and be like, hey, like,
I want
can we do
something.
something? And I'm just like, I melt. I feel
Oh,
like I'm
so
I'm
cute.
definitely a sucker
Yeah.
and a continuous victim. of the ABCs.
Oh yes, no, I know. Same with my dogs. I'm just like I can't. Like I know I'm doing it, but also like it's a dog, and I don't want to say no. So
Right.
kind of pick my battles. Yeah, I agree. And then I also came up with some just like simple general ones. Like a kid wants a toy, so they start screaming for the toy. The parent's busy, so they hand them the toy. Well, now they're gonna like yell again next time, more likely. Or same like a kid has to do homework, they rip up the paper. The consequence would be that they didn't have to do the homework. Um, yeah,
I'd make my kid glue it back together.
I know. Well, I guess I'll kind of touch on seven, but one of the things I looked into with the ABCs was like the functions of the behaviors. And I actually worked at a applied behavior analysis clinic for years, and we'd have to do like functional analysis, like the functions for why the kids are doing the behaviors. And one of them, he would rip up his homework every time, and like at one point we'd like print off like stacks of the same assignment, and he would like rip it up, and we just like, oh, here it is. Like it was like just
I wonder what he would have done in like,
but
like during the pandemic when his computer is a laptop.
yeah, that those days are hard
Yeah,
because
he
when the
can't
kids
he
are
can't
like really
rip up
dangerous.
a
And
PDF file,
yeah,
buddy,
we used to have to just print off all of the kids uh assignments instead of letting him do it on the computer, because he one time just was like, I don't want to do this, chucked his computer.
Ooh,
So yeah, fun times.
that sounds fun.
Yeah. All right.
Um,
Let's see. How would a behaviorist treat OCD? Give a specific example. So this would be the exposure with response prevention is what I put. It's where you're exposing them to the behavior and not letting them complete it. One of the examples I have was I actually knew someone who has OCD, and they needed everything in their pantry to be like everything had to face perfectly, same direction, like all the cans facing. And I didn't do this myself, but she would have family that would like turn it, and she like couldn't leave the kitchen without fixing it. So like they would turn the things, and she would have to leave the kitchen without fixing the pantry. So that's one of the examples that I had.
that's a good one. I mean, I don't know another way to answer like how they would treat it. I don't have the same answer.
Yeah.
Um, and in a way, it's the same example, but I'll just give like a different scenario. Um, I don't have personally like full on, like I don't meet the criteria, but I
Mhm.
have like issues with facing. um, at work, I work with like in a shipping department for phones, and we have like racks with bins, and those bins have like iPhones in them,
Mhm.
and each bin is like a different color, size, gigabyte, all that. And I have like specific ways of putting them in, and like they're all faced the same way. They're, like some people, it drives me mad. They'll like put one where, um the barcodes are on this
Mhm.
side, and then all of a sudden the barcodes are on this side, and like I have to go through and scan every individual phone at the end
Right.
of my Saturdays for inventory. And I'm just like, why is the other supervisor putting them in
That is
all willy-nilly?
frustrating.
Because like he has to do the same thing. I'm like, why are
That would
you
drive
doing
me
this?
nuts.
And so like I obsess over like putting them in the right way, and like I straighten out the bins.
Yeah.
And I sometimes I just have to force myself. I'll see it and I'll be like, that's not right. And I'll go to fix it. And then I'm like, I don't have time for this. And so
Right.
I like peel myself away from it. But then
Right.
I'm
It's like
thinking
hard,
about it.
but
And every time I walk by, I look and I'm just
don't
like,
fix it.
gotta fix that. And I just fix it real quick. And so it's not really, I guess, I don't know if it's really an example of how to do it. For me, my constant reminder is you don't have time for this.
Right. Like it might be on a like a less like
And
severe level, but no, I think that's a really good example.
yeah, I also started telling my like the reps because I'm a supervisor, and so I tell the reps like, if you need a phone that's not in a bin, open the box, take what you need, and walk away so I can put them away.
Leave them out
And
so I
then
can go. You put away
I
the first
also
time
started
check.
training my lead how to put them away how I want them put away.
That's smart. That'll help you
So
a
I don't
lot.
have to like,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, like I train the people to do the things so I don't have to worry about it and I can move on
Right. Well,
because I
that'll help, 'cause then
know
hopefully
that,
she can like make sure other people do it correctly too. So,
yeah, just less hands in the pot, you know?
right.
I guess it's
Exactly.
not really a great I like example because I'm trying to control it more.
No, but I think that's a good example.
But
One other
yeah,
example that I have is at the clinic I worked at, we had a kid who was like nonverbal, had a lot of like really aggressive behaviors, but he developed OCD over time. And some of the things that would happen where he'd have to touch every corner of the desk before he sat down, or like what was it? I don't remember the exact. It was like every 5 steps he had to take 1 step back, or I don't remember the exact number. Um, what was the other one? I forget what the other one was, but he would have, when we first started working on it, he would have like enormous behaviors, like aggressive behaviors. Like we would either like cover like one of the corners up or like sit on one of the corners. Um, and I mean, when I left the job, he was like still working through it, but yeah, that's another example.
that sounds stressful.
Yeah.
Um,
What are
next
the,
question.
oh,
Are you
sorry.
ready to move on or?
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, okay. Um, benefits and detriments of using behaviorism as a therapeutic approach. Um, the benefits, it's scientific,
Right, you already kind of touched on
uh,
that one, yeah. And there was like
right?
high efficacy. Yeah.
Uh, I didn't when I kind of stopped at that and I was like, I have to have more than that. So I just brought the point that there's, and I know a lot of the other approaches have like similar things, but I noticed that like behaviorism kind of has a lot more different types of treatment, and they're
Yeah.
all like each treatment seems to kind of be like focused kind of like more on one thing. Like one seems to like work best for anxiety and fear. There's one like, response and ritual prevention. It's
Mhm.
really good for OCD. There's um the one that I actually have for the next question, the behavioral activation is really good for depression, and there's
Mhm.
some that are like really good for low functioning individuals. So it's really cool that like um I think it's beneficial that they have like targeted
Yeah.
treatments for specific like disorders and issues.
No, that's exactly. I know. I was like, that's not enough just saying that like it's high efficacy and measurable. So I actually said the exact same thing. Was that there was, even though like I don't consider myself like a determinist, or I do like the idea that there is like using the behaviors to come up with like a solution, and that there's so many of them.
Yeah. And it's also, helps, it kind of teaches the individual how to experience things
Mhm.
differently, um by kind of just like teaching them like, hey, this behavior is like not adaptive,
Yeah.
but here's a new way
Yeah.
to experience it, and a new like, it's like you're um I don't know, it's just like a new way to
Yeah. No, I
look
know
at
what you're
things,
saying. I
to view
agree.
things, and
Yeah. For the
yeah.
detriments, I wrote that for some people it can be harder, or it can be a difficult type of therapy, like example for like exposure therapy. Um, and I remember Dr. Butler said that it also can be like too direct for some people in some cultures.
Yeah. I had that. Also, it's not yet quite proven to be like multiculturally
Hmm.
efficacious. And one of the examples is because it could be too direct.
Yeah.
Um, and I also, the observations, as
Mhm.
like beneficial as they are, they can also like change the behavior
Yeah.
just by like being there and observing. And then this is kind of like a personal kind of like a thought bubble that I had about the exposure therapies is, if it's not handled like appropriately, like if you're not trained well enough in it, or even if you are trained, depending on the level of fear, like I feel like it could be like a traumatic experience for the
Yeah, if you
person
don't do it right,
if you
yeah.
move too fast.
Or like if they're not
Or
ready, if the patient's just not ready for it and you do it too early. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree.
So that's all I have for that.
Me too. Well, we're at 20 minutes, so perfect time for last
Oh, cool.
question. Find out more information about something that interested you from the chapter, share and discuss this with your partner.
So, did you already cover everything you wanted to say about yours, or?
Pretty much. I was just gonna say, yeah, I looked into like the functions and there's like attention. It's like you want something or you want attention for something, then there's access, you want like access to an item. And then there's escape and avoid. So escape is that you are trying to get out of doing something. Like if you're asked to do your homework, you try to get out of it. And then like avoid, you know something's happening, so you try to get out of it. And then like automatic, which is basically without a you like do something with no demand, without demand placed on you. So it's the idea that you like find the function, kind of like do like the find the function of the behavior, and that kind of determines how you like in the ABCs, what consequence follows their behavior.
Yeah, I actually almost looked up that one, so I'm glad I didn't. Because well, now like I'm probably more intrigued to look it up, but at least we weren't talking about the same thing.
Yeah, right. No, I agree.
um, so yeah, I just kind of briefly looked more into the behavioral activation
Yeah,
because
I'm
it
curious
was
about
kind of
that.
intriguing, and also I was just like, people with depression lack motivation. So how are you gonna like? How does that work? You know, how are you gonna like
Mhm.
motivate them to like go out and do things? And like what I found, I just nope, it doesn't say it. It's a PDF. I think it was like Michigan State that kind of like posted like this thing that I read. um and they kind of like broke it down like a little bit
Yeah.
in like more detail on like what it involves. And so what it involves is like kind of like helping the client kind of have a more like better understanding of how vicious the cycle of depression is.
Okay.
Um, and it like starts off with them like monitoring what they're doing on a daily basis, identifying goals and values, and then trying to build an upward spiral instead of a downward spiral of motivation and energy through pleasure and mastery, scheduling, as Dr. We discussed,
Hmm.
purposely scheduling in enjoyable and meaningful activities into your life. It also helps out with like problem solving around potential barriers that the
Okay.
individual might place on themselves, like such as motivation.
Right.
That's a big barrier. Reducing avoidance, working as a team, which I thought is kind of cool because I like the team aspect with
Me too.
therapy. To so working as a team to make gradual, systematic, sustained progress. And they emphasize that change doesn't happen overnight.
I like
And
that.
they use like between session assignments like homework. So like it's just like doing things little by little and then kind of like building
I
onto
like
it.
that idea of like just like little small steps at a time, so you're not like getting ahead of yourself or getting overwhelmed.
Yeah. Cause like I feel like, yeah, it's a great idea to like get out there and go and do stuff. But like when you think too big
Yeah,
or go too big, it can backfire. Like
right. And
you
like
can,
without like the right support, it's probably a lot, well, it definitely is a lot easier said than done.
yeah, yeah, like it could either like backfire on like, oh my God, that was too much. I'm overwhelmed and now I'm in a bigger, deeper hole.
Right.
Or you can have like the too big of an idea to the point where it's too big and then they don't even do it.
And then you just give up before you've even like
Yeah, because it's
started
just
the
like
work
it's
of
just
getting better.
overwhelming before you even try it. So like
Right.
I like the baby steps thing where it's just
Me
like,
too.
let's try this.
I
You did
like
really
that.
great with that. Like, so this week, let's do that. But like, let's also do this.
Right. I like
Like,
that. That's
not,
actually one of the like therapies I don't know, one of the approaches I don't know much at all. So I like that you look that up. That's super interesting.
yeah, I definitely, I mean, I didn't even read the whole, it's like a manual basically.
Okay. Yeah, I
I
bet.
just
Yeah,
kind of like
there's far so much
scrolled through and
information.
I was like, "Ooh, this looks important. It's in a box." And I read it and I like scrolled through until I found another box. So
Yeah.
like, I'm
Probably
definitely
like
going
it.
to read
That was a really
more
good
about it.
summary, so it worked.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah. I don't have anything else to
Me
add.
neither. Right.
Awesome.
Stop it.